In the summer of 1940, Europe was engulfed in the turmoil of war. On July 28, in the picturesque city of Salzburg, Austria, a significant meeting took place. Adolf Hitler, the German dictator, was leveraging the recent fall of France and the looming possibility of victory over the United Kingdom to press his agenda. He met with Slovak politicians, aiming to reshape their government to align more closely with Nazi ideals. Hitler demanded the removal of moderate leaders, replacing them with pro-German radicals. He made it clear that refusal would jeopardize Slovakia's protection, leaving it vulnerable to Hungary, a neighboring state eager to reclaim lost territories. Faced with this ultimatum, the Slovaks relented, setting the stage for a series of tragic events that would unfold over the next few years. 2 years later, in March 1942, Slovakia began the systematic deportation of its Jewish population to Nazi death camps. Between March and October of that year, approximately 58,000 Jews were rounded up, forced into labor and concentration camps within Slovakia, and then handed over to German authorities for transport to extermination camps in occupied Poland. Among those caught in this brutal machinery was a young woman named Helena Citronova, whose life would become a remarkable story of survival, moral complexity, and an unlikely connection forged in the darkest of places. Helena Citronova was born on August 26, 1922, in the small town of Humane, in what was then Czechoslovakia. She grew up in a close, knit Jewish family, one of 4 children. Her father served as a cantor, filling their home with music and faith. Helena herself was drawn to the arts from a young age, with a particular love for singing and dancing. Her older brother often teased her, promising to take her to Prague one day to showcase her talents. It was a light-hearted dream, one that spoke to a simpler time before the world around them began to crumble. In 1934, Helena's sister, Rotaika, and her husband made a bold decision to emigrate to Palestine, seeking a better life. They settled there with their young daughter, but economic struggles soon forced them to reconsider. Despite warnings from the Jewish community in Palestine about the brewing conflict in Europe. "What? Are you crazy? There's a war coming." Arsaike and her family returned to Czechoslovakia in 1939. By then, the shadow of war was impossible to ignore, and their decision would prove fateful. The Second World War erupted on September 1, 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland, setting off a chain of events that would devastate millions of lives. In Slovakia, the government, increasingly aligned with Nazi ideology, began enacting anti-Jewish laws. In April 1940, the first Aryanization law was passed, stripping Jews of their property and barring them from economic participation. The propaganda of the time painted Jews as exploiters who had amassed wealth at the expense of Slovaks, a cruel stereotype used to justify their exclusion. By September 9, 1941, the Slovak government introduced the Jewish Code, a set of laws modelled after the Nazi Nuremberg laws, spanning 270 articles. It was harsher than the Slovak constitution itself. The code stripped Jews of their rights, restricting their movements, limiting their access to public spaces, and mandating that they wear a yellow star to mark their identity. It annulled debts owed to Jews, confiscated their property, and effectively erased their place in society. When some Slovak officials resisted these measures, Prime Minister Vojtěch dismissed their concerns, declaring, "I am not a Democrat." For the Jewish population, the worst was still to come. A census conducted in December 1940 recorded 89,000 Jews living in Slovakia. By March 1942, the Slovak government signed an agreement with Nazi Germany, becoming the first state outside direct German control to authorize the deportation of its Jewish citizens. Between March and October of that year, Slovak authorities rounded up 58,000 Jews, concentrating them in camps such as Sir, Nova Kai, and Vin. From there, the Hlinka Guard, Slovakia's state police, facilitated their transfer to German forces at the border. The deportations were brutal. Families were given just 4 hours to prepare, with no chance to escape. Beatings, forced shaving, and invasive searches for hidden valuables were routine. Some members of the Helena Guard exploited their authority, committing acts of violence and even rape against Jewish women. In a chilling speech, Joseph Tiso, a Catholic priest and the president of Slovakia, defended the deportations, prompting Adolf Hitler to remark, "It is interesting how this little Catholic priest Tiso is sending us the Jews." The vast majority of those deported, more than 60,000 of the 70,000 Jews sent from Slovakia, perished in camps like Auschwitz, Majdanek and Sobibor. Of the 58,000 deported in 1942, only 300 survived. Among those swept up in the first wave of deportations was Helena Citronova. On March 25, 1942, she was one of 997 young women and teenage girls loaded onto the first official transport to Auschwitz. The Slovak authorities deceived them, claiming they were being sent for a few months of government service. In reality, they had been sold to the Germans for 500 Reichsmarks each, roughly 200, to serve as slave labour. The journey was grueling, and their arrival at Auschwitz on March 26 marked the beginning of a nightmare. Helena was initially assigned to an outdoor work unit, tasked with demolishing buildings and clearing rubble. The conditions were inhumane. She slept on bug-infested straw, surrounded by despair as women around her succumbed to exhaustion, hunger, and hopelessness. Helena later recalled the terror of those early days. "We weren't allowed to run, so when the wall came down, the first girls were crushed and died on the spot." Death was a constant presence, and survival seemed uncertain. But Helena's story took an unexpected turn on October 30, 1942. She was reassigned to work in the Canada warehouse, a section of Auschwitz where the possessions of murdered prisoners were sorted. The name, Canada, was a grim irony, evoking a land of wealth and abundance, as the warehouse held the belongings stripped from new arrivals. Clothes, jewellery, and personal items that were sorted and shipped back to Germany or pilfered by SS guards. For prisoners, working in the Canada warehouse was a coveted position. It offered access to food and water, the chance to grow out their hair, and relative protection from the beatings that were commonplace elsewhere in the camp. That same day, Helena participated in a musical performance organised by prisoners. Singing had always been her refuge, and she poured her heart into the performance, believing it might be her last. Her voice caught the attention of Franz Wunsch, an SS officer overseeing the warehouse operations. Franz Wunsch was not the stereotypical image of a cold, ruthless Nazi. When he approached Helena after her performance and asked her to sing again, she looked into his eyes and saw something unexpected. "God, where are the eyes of a murderer?" she later recalled. "These are the eyes of a human being." Wunsch was captivated by her, and what began as a moment of connection grew into something far more complex. He fell in love with Helena, visiting her frequently at the warehouse. His demeanour toward her was gentle and protective, a stark contrast to the brutality of Auschwitz. He brought her extra food and clothing, even sharing his own rations and gifts sent by his mother. When Helena contracted typhus, a deadly illness that swept through the camp, Wunsch hid her and nursed her back to health, risking his own position to do so. He also extended his protection to other prisoners, saving lives at great personal risk. In small, secretive notes, he confessed his feelings. "I fell in love with you." For Helena, the situation was fraught with moral and emotional conflict. She despised the Nazis for their atrocities, particularly after losing her parents and brother at Auschwitz. Her brother had died attempting to escape, his body caught on the camp's electrified fence. The memory of his death haunted her, and the idea of forming any bond with an SS officer was unthinkable. "I thought I'd rather be dead than be involved with an SS man," she later said. Yet, over time, she began to develop a reluctant affection for Wunsch. His kindness, however inconsistent with his role as an SS officer, offered her a lifeline in a place designed to strip away humanity. The turning point came when Helena's sister, Rohaika, arrived at Auschwitz with her 2 children, a 9-year-old daughter and a newborn son. Helena learned of their arrival and, in a panic, ran to the crematorium, fearing they were about to be killed. She pleaded with the guards, even offering to die with her family. A friend alerted Wunsch, who arrived just as Joseph Mengele, the infamous Angel of Death, was selecting prisoners for death. In a moment of high tension, Wunsch publicly beat Helena for breaking curfew, a punishment that masked his true intentions. As he struck her, he whispered, "Tell me quickly what your sister's name is before I'm too late." Helena, desperate, replied, "You won't be able to. She came with 2 little children." Wunsch's response was grim. "Children? That's different. Children can't live here." He rushed to the crematorium and managed to save Rohaika by claiming she was needed in the Canada warehouse. Tragically, he could do nothing for her children, who were sent to the gas chambers. The loss was devastating, but Wunsch's intervention gave Helena a small measure of hope in an otherwise hopeless place. The relationship between Helena and Franz continued in secret, shrouded in the moral ambiguity of their circumstances. Helena faced interrogation and torture from camp authorities suspicious of their bond, but she refused to confirm it, knowing that doing so would mean death for both of them. "There were moments where I forgot that I was a Jew and that he was not a Jew," she later admitted. "Honestly, in the end, I loved him, but it could not be realistic." Survivors like Bat, Shiva Dagan, who knew them both, maintained that their relationship was not sexual, as the camp's cramped conditions made such intimacy nearly impossible. Helena's influence on Wunsch was undeniable. A former prisoner noted that while Wunsch had a reputation for sadistic violence, particularly toward male prisoners, his behavior softened after meeting Helena. She encouraged him to temper his cruelty, though he was not absolved of his actions. During the Jewish revolt at Auschwitz on October 7, 1944, Wunsch shot a young Greek Jew, an act that underscored his complicity in the camp's atrocities. As the Soviet army approached in January 1945, Auschwitz was evacuated. In their final moments together, Franz told Helena, "Take care, Helena, you'll make it. I've loved you so much." They shared a long, intimate kiss, a fleeting moment of human connection amid the chaos. On January 27, 1945, the Soviets liberated Auschwitz, finding only 7,000 prisoners, most of whom were sick and dying. Helena was among the survivors, her spirit battered but unbroken. After the war, Helena rebuilt her life. She married a Zionist activist and moved to Israel, where she raised 2 children. Franz, meanwhile, searched for her, writing letters she chose not to answer. He eventually settled in Austria, married and started a family. For 27 years they had no contact, but in 1972 Franz Wunsch, then 50, faced trial for war crimes. His wife reached out to Helena, pleading for her to testify on his behalf. Despite threats from Jewish activists, Helena felt a sense of duty. She traveled to Vienna and spoke in court, carefully recounting the ways Wunsch had helped her and others while acknowledging his crimes. She avoided his gaze, speaking without emotion until she mentioned Rohaika's children. The memory overwhelmed her, and she broke down. Wunsch, too, wept, expressing remorse for his actions. Despite overwhelming evidence of his role in the Holocaust, he was acquitted. Helena and Franz never saw each other again. She returned to Israel, living quietly until her death on June 4, 2007, at the age of 84. Franz died on February 23, 2009, at 86. Their story, born in the horrors of Auschwitz, remains a testament to the complexities of human relationships where love and survival intertwined in a place defined by hatred and death. Helena's courage and Wunsch's conflicted actions highlight the grey areas of morality, reminding us that even in the darkest times, humanity can manifest in unexpected ways. Their tale, though fraught with pain, is a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of compassion, however imperfect it may be.